Just wait, they said. Something big is coming. That's what they said. My name's Erin. I'm 27. I live alone in a quiet little house just outside Denver, the kind of place where the wind whispers through the cracks in the wood, and the silence feels like an old friend. I renovated it myself. Every wall, every floorboard, every nail in this house was put there by my own hands. Not because I had to, but because building something steady felt like the only way to remind myself I still existed. I run a small interior design business. Nothing flashy. Not the kind of job that makes people lean in when they ask what you do. But it's steady. It's honest. It's quiet. Like most of my life. My family, well, they don't really call me Erin anymore. When I come up, if I come up, it's usually just, your sister or her. Sometimes I wonder if I faded out of their picture, or if they blurred me on purpose. So when my mother called me 2 weeks before my birthday, I almost didn't pick up. I assumed it was a pocket dial, or maybe she forgot who she was calling. But she spoke first. Hi, honey. I was just thinking, what day is your birthday this year? I paused. June 14th, same as it's always been. She laughed, a small, strange sound, like a giggle caught in a lie. Well, maybe keep that day open, okay? Don't book anything. Something's in the works. I asked her what kind of something. She only said, you'll see. It's big. 3 days later, my older brother Zach texted me, clear your day. You'll like what's coming. It's about time. Zach doesn't usually text me, not unless he needs last-minute advice for his condo or a gift idea for mom. But this time, there was no favor, no ask. Just that. Like he was in on something. Like they were actually planning together. Which made me hesitate. Because we don't do birthday surprises in my family. Not for me. Not since college. After I turned 22, the effort just stopped. 1 year, they sent a group text at midnight. 2 emojis, no name. Another year, they told me they'd do something later, and later never came. But this felt different. I wanted to believe them. So I cleared my schedule. Cancelled a site visit. Turned down dinner with a friend. I even bought myself a cake, chocolate, with a tiny sugar flower on top, from the same bakery my dad used to stop at when I was a kid. I cleaned the kitchen, lit a candle, and set 2 plates on the table. Not because I thought anyone would show up. Just, in case. I even wore the pearl earrings my grandma gave me when I was 16, back before the silence between me and my family became a wall too tall to see over. By noon, I'd refreshed my messages 5 times. By 2, I was checking Zach's social media. Nothing. No posts. No clues. Just pictures of coffee, a gym mirror, his golden retriever. The candle burned lower. The sugar flour on the cake began to melt. The only question heavier than the silence was, did they actually remember me this year? Or did they just want me to hope they did? By 2:30, the candle had wilted halfway. The frosting sagged. I moved one of the plates, telling myself maybe dinner was the real surprise. Maybe there'd be a group call. A delivery. A message that started with close your eyes. I didn't really believe it. But I didn't stop hoping, either. I wandered the house. Straightened picture frames. Refolded a blanket. Picked up a sock that didn't need picking up. Anything to make the hours pass without facing them. At 4:15, I checked my phone again. No messages. No missed calls. Nothing from Zach. Nothing from Mom. Just a software update and a promotional email from a furniture vendor. I thought about calling. Just to ask, is something still happening? But I didn't want to sound desperate. Worse, I didn't want to hear them be confused, like they'd already forgotten whatever they'd promised. By 5, I sat at the table. I poured a glass of wine, not because I was celebrating. Because I needed to hold something that wasn't disappointment. I took a bite of cake. It tasted like sugar in silence. And then, a memory. I was 8. My birthday party was supposed to be at the lake. Balloons, cousins, cake shaped like a football. I wore my favorite red shoes, the ones Mom said made me look like a cartoon hero. But it rained that morning. Not just rain, a downpour. The lake flooded. Plans were cancelled. But they didn't tell me. They just left me at Grandma's house. No explanation. No cake. No apology. I remember waiting at the window, face pressed to the glass, watching the road. Every time a car passed, I jumped. And when none of them stopped, I finally asked Grandma if maybe they'd forgotten me. She said, "Sometimes grown-ups get busy. It doesn't mean they don't love you." But it felt like it did. Back at the table, I wiped my eyes before they could fall. Not because I was ashamed. Just tired. Tired of thinking this year would be different. At 6:15, I opened Instagram. Not to post. Just to scroll. Everyone else seemed to be somewhere. Dinners. Parks. Concerts. Families. Candles. Laughter. Connection. I wasn't jealous. Not exactly. I was just lonely. But somewhere between the silence and the sugar and the old scars of red birthday shoes, I realized something. This house was still here. So was I. I was here. And I had shown up, even if no one else had. That mattered. I blew out the candle. Not to make a wish, just to mark the moment. The smoke curled up into the dim light like a ribbon of breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Then I cut a second slice of cake. I left the second plate where it was. Not because someone might still come. But because I didn't want to eat alone. Maybe something big really was coming. Just not from them. Maybe it was the quiet courage of staying soft in a world that forgets you. Maybe it was the strength of lighting a candle when no one shows up. Maybe it was learning how to be your own celebration. Either way. I'm still here. And I'm not done hoping. I stared at the screen, unable to move. That locket, my locket. The one Grandma pressed into my palm like a promise. Now it hung around Mallory's neck like a borrowed piece of costume jewelry. Casual. Decorative. Forgotten of its meaning. And somehow, that hurt worse than the party. They hadn't forgotten my birthday. They had chosen something else instead, something shinier, easier, louder. A second engagement party for Zach and Mallory, a redo, hosted at the family cabin they said no one wanted anymore. The same cabin I offered, more than once, to help fix. The one they said was too far, too broken. But there they were, the candles lit, the table set, the banner glowing with glittering letters, Zach and Mallory forever starts now. And just beneath that banner, my mother smiling like the sun had come back. Holding Mallory close. Captioned with words I couldn't unread, gained a daughter tonight. I felt something in me give way, not loudly, not all at once. Just a quiet shift. A realization. It wasn't that I didn't matter. It was that I had been carefully, gently, and absolutely, replaced. And they weren't sorry. They were proud. They toasted it. They posted it. And maybe the worst part wasn't what they took, the party, the day, the locket. It was how easily they let me go. How softly they removed me from the picture, like peeling off an old sticker. No mess. No fight. Just, gone. My thumb hovered over the screen. I could have closed the app, deleted the thread, turned off the phone. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I tapped back to the story, the one with the dinner table, and paused it just long enough to study each face. My father laughing, glass in hand. Aunt Denise reaching across for a bowl of something warm. Uncle Leo mid-toast, cheeks flushed. My brother, Zach, leaning into Mallory, eyes bright with celebration. And her, in soft pink, head tilted back in a laugh I'd never heard before. She looked beautiful. I won't lie. But that necklace didn't belong to her. That necklace belonged to a promise. A moment on a porch when the sun was melting through the trees and my grandmother said, "You've got quiet eyes, like your mama did when she was little." She unhooked that locket from her own neck like it was part of her, placed it gently in my hand and whispered, "This one's yours. When you're older. When the time is right." Inside was a black and white photo of her and Grandpa on their wedding day, faces full of mischief and joy, like they'd just tricked the universe into giving them one perfect day. On the other side was a small, folded paper heart, unevenly cut. My name was scribbled on it in blue ink, Erin. And now, it was around someone else's neck. Without a word. Without a thought. I closed the app and set my phone down. There was no use waiting anymore. The candle was gone. The cake was warm and leaning. The second plate, still untouched, felt almost mocking now. But strangely, I wasn't angry. I was hollow. But not broken. I was alone. But not small. Because in that stillness, in the gap between what they promised and what they delivered, I found something that didn't come with balloons or banners or group photos. I found clarity. They hadn't forgotten me. They had simply chosen not to see me anymore. And that meant I didn't have to keep hoping they'd turn back around. Hope is a beautiful thing. But sometimes, it grows like vines around your ankles, and you mistake the weight for roots. Sometimes letting go isn't giving up. It's remembering you can walk away. I got up. Cleared the table. Wrapped the second piece of cake and put it in the fridge. Then I picked up my phone, and for the first time in years, I opened a new message to my family group chat. Thank you for making things clear. I hope the night was everything you wanted. It's time I stopped waiting for a seat at a table that was never set for me. Wishing you all the best. I didn't expect a reply. I wasn't writing for them anymore. I stepped outside onto the porch. The air was cool and clean, and the stars were coming out, slow and soft. I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and sat in the old rocking chair I'd refinished myself, the one I found in Grandma's garage the year she passed. I closed my eyes and held the image of her in my mind. The way she looked at me that day. The sound of her voice. This one's yours. Maybe the necklace was gone. But the promise? The love that came with it? That was mine. Still is. I opened my eyes and whispered into the quiet. I'm still here, Grandma. I haven't gone anywhere. And the night, silent and vast, whispered back, not with words, but with something that felt a little like peace. 4 hours later, another ping. Look, I get that you're upset. But you leaving the group without saying anything was kind of dramatic. I stared at the words for a long time. Not because I didn't know how to reply, but because I did. I knew exactly what I'd say if I let myself. But I also knew that whatever I said would be taken apart, softened, misunderstood. My silence would be easier for him to explain than my truth. Still, I typed. Dramatic is throwing a second engagement party on someone's birthday and pretending that's normal. Dramatic is wearing a locket that was never yours to give. Me leaving quietly? That's not drama. That's self-respect. I didn't send it. I watched the blinking cursor, then tapped select all and deleted the message. Instead, I just powered the phone off. I had nothing left to prove. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized myself. Not in the way that comes from age or change, but in the quiet, grounded stillness behind my eyes. Something had settled. Not peace, not yet. But something solid. It had taken me this long to understand, being forgotten isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's a slow unthreading, a skipped message, a missed invite, a locket given to someone else. And if you're not careful, you start pulling the thread yourself. Making yourself smaller. Quieter. Easier to forget. I wasn't going to do that anymore. I started small. I took down the birthday banner I had taped in my hallway, the one I had pretended was ironic but secretly loved. I folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer. Then I opened the closet and pulled out a cardboard box. The photo, the one of the four of us at the cabin, still sat wrapped in newspaper inside. I held it for a moment. We looked happy. And maybe we were, in that moment. But memories are tricky like that. They freeze 1 second in time and ask you to forget everything else. I didn't throw the photo away. I just put it somewhere quieter. A memory, not a shrine. A few days later, I stopped by a local vintage store. There was a jewelry case near the back with a handful of lockets, none of them mine, none of them grandma's. But I picked one up anyway, oval, gold, plain. Inside, it was empty. The woman behind the counter asked if I was buying it for someone. Yeah, I said, for someone who forgot they deserved to hold their own history. She smiled like she didn't quite get it but rang me up anyway. When I got home, I printed a tiny copy of the photo from Grandma's wedding. The one I remembered so vividly inside my locket. I folded a paper heart too, not perfectly cut, not professional. Just honest. On one side I wrote my name. On the other side, still here. I placed both inside the new locket and fastened it around my neck. It didn't replace what was taken. But it reminded me what was mine. I started showing up for myself in ways I used to wait for others to do. I cooked my favorite meals even when there was no one to share them. I walked the trail behind my house at sunset and let the wind braid through my hair like Grandma used to do. I began journaling again, not about them, but about me, the version of me that still believed in kindness, still believed in home, even if it had to be built from scratch. One evening, I lit a candle. Not because I was hoping someone would come. But because I was already there. Sometimes the grief still comes. Not loud. Just quiet moments, like walking past the old bakery or hearing Zach's favorite song at the hardware store. I let it pass through. I don't chase it away anymore. I've learned that grief is just love with nowhere to go. But I'm learning to love differently now. More inwardly. More gently. Some nights, I sit on the porch and whisper to the stars, hoping maybe Grandma still listens. I've got quiet eyes, I say out loud, like a reminder. And the night always answers with silence, not empty, not cruel. Just full of space. Room for something new. I haven't spoken to Zach again. Not yet. Maybe one day. But for now, I am building something better, not from the pieces they left behind, but from the ones I've kept safe all along. Because even if they forgot who I was, I didn't. And I won't. Not ever again. Now I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't wait for a thank you, or a message, or even a moment of recognition. The locket didn't belong to me anymore, not because I wanted to let it go, but because I had already been let go. And maybe that's what hurt most of all. That someone can decide your place in their life isn't needed, and never once look back to see if you're okay. I walked home from the post office slower than usual. The summer light was softening, stretching shadows across the sidewalk like memories that linger too long. I passed by the little coffee shop I used to visit with Zach when we were teenagers, the one with the crooked table in the corner. The table was still there. I wasn't. When I got home, I opened the windows. I let the air in. It smelled like rain even though the sky hadn't cracked yet. I took a deep breath and stood in the doorway, feeling something unfamiliar rise in my chest, not anger, not grief, but space. Space where their absence had been pressing in on me. Space where I could begin again. That night, I made dinner for myself. Nothing fancy, roasted vegetables, toasted bread, a little lemon and thyme. I lit a candle, not because I was celebrating anything, but because I wanted the table to feel full, even if I was the only one there. I put 2 plates down again. But this time, the second one wasn't for someone else. It was for who I used to be. For the girl who used to beg to be seen. For the sister who waited. For the child who held that locket in trembling hands and believed love could be promised forever. I looked across the table and whispered to her, "You made it." And for the first time in years, I believed it. A few days passed. The wedding came and went. No one asked where I was. No one followed up. But a few friends, real ones, did. Lisa dropped off lemon bars with a sticky note that just said, whatever it was, they didn't deserve you. Devin, my old college roommate, called just to laugh about a memory from sophomore year. Even my neighbor, Mr. Halpern, waved from across the yard and said, "The world gets quiet before it gives you something worth hearing." I took all of it in like small stones I could carry in my pocket. Proof that being forgotten by some doesn't mean you're invisible to all. And then came my birthday, 1 year later. I didn't expect anything. That was the difference now. I didn't wait. I lived. I spent the morning planting flowers in the yard. I'd just learned how to grow lavender from seed. At noon, I went to my favorite diner and bought myself a slice of lemon meringue pie. I wore the pearl earrings Grandma gave me. I didn't need a party. Because somewhere along the way, I realized the big thing they all promised me had already come. It was me. Surviving. Healing. Starting again. Not with their permission. Not with their applause. But in spite of it all. So if you ever find yourself waiting, for a message, an apology, a reason, you don't need any of it to begin again. You just need a quiet moment and the courage to say, "They may have forgotten me, but I remember who I am." And that's enough. More than enough. I didn't need it back. I didn't need them to understand. I only needed it out of my house. That Sunday, I received one final message from Zach. "Did you send this?" I didn't reply. There was nothing left to clarify. That night, I took down the last photo of my family still hanging in the hallway. It was the one where we were all laughing, caught in some forgotten joke on the cabin porch. For years I kept it up because it looked like love, even when it hadn't felt like it. Now, it just looked like a version of me who was still hoping. I replaced it with something I had framed years ago but never displayed. A simple sketch I made in college, a chair, drawn in soft charcoal, sitting slightly off-center in an empty room. One chair. Unoccupied. Still. I hung it straight. Stepped back. Looked. A reminder, I was here. I stayed at the table long after my seat had been cleared. Not because I was waiting anymore, but because I had finally accepted that no one was coming. And that I could still sit there anyway. The table could be mine now. The room, the silence, the air. All of it. They wouldn't say my name at the wedding. They wouldn't toast to me in speeches. They might not even notice the envelope had arrived, but they'd know. Somewhere deep and wordless, they would know. I saw everything. I remembered. And I chose to leave the door open behind me. Not so I could come back. But so they'd know. I didn't have to. Some stories don't end with slammed doors or tearful confrontations. Some just taper into stillness. And in that stillness, you build something quietly stronger than being chosen. You choose yourself. I started going on morning walks again. Just a few blocks at first, then further, down the old trail behind the hardware store where the creek bends and the cottonwoods grow thick and tall. I let the wind remind me I was still breathing. I painted the hallway yellow. Hung up my own artwork, even the messy ones. I opened all the windows the next day and let the whole house smell like rain and wood and something beginning again. I made coffee slowly. Put a second mug out sometimes, not for someone else, but just to remind myself that one day, maybe, I would share this quiet with someone who knew how to hold it with care. I got back to my work. Designing rooms that made people feel safe, really safe. Not just beautiful. Not just for show. Spaces where someone like me might walk in and finally exhale. And I remembered what my grandmother whispered to me that summer on the porch. You've got quiet eyes, like your mama did when she was little. Eyes that didn't demand to be seen but held everything anyway. If you've ever left quietly just so they'd feel the silence louder. If you've ever loved people who forgot how to say your name. If you've ever stayed too long at a table where your plate kept going empty. You don't need to explain. Just leave a dot. And walk forward. Because sometimes, being forgotten is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of remembering who you are.